As football fans, we throw around the term generational way too often, but in the case of Myles Garrett, no label is more fitting. Garrett is without a doubt the most dominant, most talented, and ultimately most valuable non-quarterback in the league right now. Through 5 games, Garrett has totaled 26 pressures and 6 sacks. His numbers might not look like those of the best defensive linemen in football, but they don't tell the full story. Evaluating pass rushers based on the stat sheet is difficult. Sacks are an extraordinarily volatile metric because so many factors go into a sack other than the work of the pass rusher. Pressures are a more descriptive metric, but are still flawed for similar reasons. Last week, I covered Aiden Hutchinson, and while charting Hutch's film, I noticed that many of his pressures came as a result of the opposing quarterback holding onto the ball for a long time. The time to throw variable is obviously outside of a pass rusher's control, so in an effort to neutralize time to throw, I plotted win rate when the ball is out in under 3 seconds against pressure rate when the ball is out in under 3 seconds for every edge rusher with at least 20 pressures. This is what that graph looks like after week 6. As you can see, Myles Garrett has comfortably separated himself from the rest of the league's edge rushers when it comes to getting to the quarterback quickly. When the time to throw is bumped down from 3 seconds to 2.5 seconds, the separation becomes even more significant. Garrett is significantly outperforming every other edge rusher in the league right now, and even guys like Nick Bosa and Micah Parsons aren't all that close. This reality becomes even more shocking when you turn on Garrett's tape and see that the rules of the pass rush don't really apply to him. If you watched last week's episode on Aiden Hutchinson, you know that to be a top-tier edge rusher in this league, you have to threaten opposing tackles in 3 ways: outside, inside, and right up the middle. Top-tier pass rushers usually have go-to moves for all 3 paths to the quarterback and string these moves together to keep opposing tackles honest. This rule, however, doesn't apply to Myles Garrett. Garrett is so good at winning around the arc that he can rely on that and a power rush to get to the quarterback consistently. I want to start with this play from back in week 1 against Cincinnati. The most important part of any pass rush rep is the get-off. Without an efficient first step across the line of scrimmage, a pass rusher will make opposing tackles comfortable in their pass set. Here, Garrett is lightning quick off the line. Look at his positioning as he finishes that first step relative to the rest of Cleveland's defensive linemen. This explosiveness can't be taught. Before the quarterback even has the ball, Garrett already has a massive advantage over Bengals left tackle Orlando Brown. Garrett combines that explosiveness with ridiculous flexibility to bend around the edge and get to the quarterback. He really didn't even use a pass rush move here. You'll see reps like this from draft prospects every year, where they can just rely purely on speed and bend to get to opposing quarterbacks. But in the NFL, this is super rare to see on a 3-step drop back. Burrow reached the top of his drop back at a depth of about 7 yards, which should not be deep enough for Garrett to bend around the edge and meet him as he hitches off of that back foot. Garrett single-handedly wrecked this play. As we go back to the sideline angle, you can see that Cincinnati's downfield concept didn't have a chance to develop. T. Higgins was about to break free over the middle, but Garrett didn't give Joe Burrow enough time to target him. Reps like these are just unfair, and Garrett's tape is loaded with them. Here against Tennessee, Garrett is aligned on the right side of your screen opposite Titans left tackle Andre Dillard. He, again, launches himself across the line of scrimmage and rips to the quarterback, pretty much carrying all 315 pounds of Dillard with him. This was another 3-step dropback, the depth of which Ryan Tannehill reached at about 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. On this play from the following week against Baltimore, Garrett did it again. He exploded off the line of scrimmage, which put Ravens tackle Patrick McCarry off balance as his quarterback received the snap. And without using anything more than a rip move, Garrett bent into the pocket to get his hands on Lamar Jackson. If Garrett hadn't reached Jackson so quickly here, this is a big play going the other way. Baltimore called a 3 verticals concept to the bunch side of the formation here, and Jackson got ready to throw as Mark Andrews came open over the middle. By some miracle, Jackson avoided allowing a strip sack, but this was another offensive play ruined by Myles Garrett. When they're losing every rep to the outside, tackles will often leave their chest open and challenge the rusher to win with power. Titans left tackle Andre Dillard tried it here against Garrett in week 3, and predictably, it did not work in his favor. Garrett turned his speed to power and walked Dillard right back into Ryan Tannehill. Plays like this, where Garrett almost appears to lift the opposing tackle off the ground, are routine for him. He's so good at winning with power through a tackle's chest, and winning with pure speed and bend around the edge, that he can be the most efficient pass rusher in the league without using an inside counter move. Garrett can win to the inside, he simply chooses not to because he's so good at winning in the more traditional ways. I only saw a handful of counter-move attempts from Garrett so far this season, and when he uses one, there's usually a specific reason. Here, for example, against Baltimore, Garrett is lined up on the right side of your screen, and Baltimore chipped him a lot in this game with running backs and tight ends, which made it difficult for Garrett to rely on his typical outside and power rushes. So on this rep, he faked the speed chop and spun to the inside for a sack. Planned counter rushes like this are few and far between on Garrett's film. On the bulk of his pass rush snaps, he threatens the outside with speed and gets to the quarterback with bend. With power rushes mixed in, most tackles simply can't handle him. But in Week 6 against San Francisco, Garrett lined up opposite the best offensive lineman in football, and Trent Williams provided the greatest challenge of Garrett's season so far. According to Pro Football Focus, in last week's game, Williams posted a pass block efficiency rate of 93.1%, allowing 4 total pressures. The last time he allowed more than 3 pressures and posted a pass block efficiency rate this low was in San Francisco's conference championship game against the Rams back in 2021. Against the protector who typically makes opposing pass rushers disappear, Myles Garrett was challenged to be more creative than usual, and he rose to the occasion. The 49ers call a lot of short dropbacks, and Brock Purdy is one of only 4 starting quarterbacks who averages less than 2.5 seconds from snap to throw, which makes it incredibly difficult for pass rushers to get to him in time, but that didn't stop Garrett from winning consistently. Here, Garrett is aligned on the right side of your screen, and I want you to first pay attention to his footwork as he approaches Trent Williams. In anticipation of the wide rush, Williams oversets to the outside, and Garrett counters this positioning with a jab step. Forced to respect the threat of the counter rush, Williams is frozen and forced to shoot his hands. Garrett neutralizes the punch with a chop to the outside and bends into the pocket as Brock Purdy lets go of the football. Even though Purdy got the ball off in time, this is an extraordinary rep from Garrett. Purdy continued to sit shallow in the pocket throughout this game, so in an effort to meet him at the top of his dropback, Garrett shifted over to more power rushes. Here, Garrett went with power at Trent Williams, and even though Purdy reached the top of his dropback at about 8 yards, Garrett was still able to influence the throw with pressure in Purdy's face. Garrett continued to alternate between outside rushes and power rushes, forcing Williams to alternate between initiating contact and leaving his chest open. Here, it's first down with about a minute to go in the game, and the 49ers need points to win. Garrett is aligned on the right side of your screen, and post-snap, Williams deploys the hug technique by leaving his chest open. Garrett responds with a power rush, but the ball is out before he can put pressure on Purdy. Cleveland called a stunt combination on the second down that followed, and the play resulted in an 8-yard gain to set up 3rd and 2. This was the biggest play of the game to this point, and Garrett rose to the occasion with the best pass rush rep I've seen from anybody all season. Upon closing the gap between himself and Trent Williams, Garrett flashed his inside hand to make this look like a power rush. Remembering the power rush Williams saw on first down, he shot his hands and prepared to drop his anchor. Garrett then ducked below the punch using Von Miller's trademarked ghost technique to bend into the pocket and get a hit on the quarterback. Jim Schwartz has been phenomenal calling plays for the Browns defense this season, but his cover 0 call on this game-defining 3rd down doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The Browns sent 7 at the quarterback, and the 49ers only kept 6 in to protect. So Browns safety Rodney McLeod came in unblocked, but Myles Garrett was still the first one to get to Brock Purdy. There's no point in sending such a heavy blitz when your alien disguised as a pass rusher can get home before the unblocked rusher can. The blitz left Greg Newsome on an island in the slot, and Jawan Jennings beat him on his out route. To me, this call is putting all of the pressure on your defensive backs when your defensive line is your biggest asset. Ultimately, the call didn't mean much because San Francisco would go on to miss the game-winning field goal, but don't let that overshadow what Myles Garrett did to Trent Williams in this game. The Defensive Player of the Year award is historically based on numbers, so if Garrett doesn't end up with 18 plus sacks, he probably won't win it. But sacks only tell part of the story, and when his 2023 season is viewed with sufficient context, it's really difficult to argue in favor of any other defensive player being more valuable at the moment. He's a game wrecker in every sense of the phrase, a talent that only comes around once every decade or so. The box score comparisons will continue for as long as Garrett is in the league, but until the film says otherwise, Myles Garrett is king of the pass rush. If you'd like to support the channel, you can check out my Patreon and Twitter, both of which will be linked in the description. I'm going to get an earlier start on draft scouting this year, so scouting reports will start to go up on the Patreon soon. Next week, I'll be back, probably covering the Bills' defense. So until then, peace.